Hi, today I'm gonna show you how to knit this cable design vest with pocket and placket color. Please check my description box for all the detail. Today it's gonna be quite long video. This vest has color and beautiful cable design, also pocket with cable design. And this vest knit from bottom to top. And pretty much no seam. There's tiny bit of the seam around the placket area. On the shoulder, I use technique called Kitchener stitch. It's not really seam. Here's the place I kind of saw them. So 99% seamless vest. Anyway, let's get started. First of all, let's make a plan. You have to take gauge, at least 5-inch by 5-inch stockinette, and please count within 4-inch. My gauge was 23 stitch across and 29 rows within 4-inch by 4-inch. Obviously, you have to use the needle and yarn you are going to use. And you must do this, otherwise you can't really figure it out how many casts you need at the very beginning. And measure widest part of your body because this vest is pretty much straight down. Then decide how wide you want. I decide 16-inch wide. Now let's figure it out your cast to start with. With my gauge, 23 stitches within 4-inch. Then I have to figure it out the number within 16-inch. The math is 23 times 16 divided by 4, which is 92. And I took safer side, and the cast should be multiple of 4. So 100 times 2 pieces, then 200 stitch to start with. Now you have to figure it out how many stitches you want for shoulder and neck. The half of the piece, which is only front piece, my stitch count should be 100 stitch. So 100 stitch divided by 6 is 16.666. So my arm opening and shoulder should be 16 stitch each, and neck opening should be leftover stitch, which is 100 minus 16 times 4 equal 36 stitches. Why divided by 6? Because when you look at the anatomy of your upper body, the shoulder part and your neck and head part, the ratio is about 1/3. But for the shoulder, you have to divide by 2 for arm opening and shoulder. That's why I divided by 6. 4. Decreasing plan for arm opening. I decrease in total of 16 stitch towards to shoulder. So 16 divided by 3 is 5.3. So I decide I am going to bind off 6 stitch on the first row. And after that, I still have 10 more stitch to decrease. So next right side row, I decrease 3 stitch, then decrease 1 stitch each on right side 7 times, total of 16 stitch. And I will talk about this little more detail in the tutorial, okay? And here's the example. If your front piece cast is 120, 120 divided by 6 is 20. So arm decreasing should be 20 stitch each, and then shoulder part is 20 stitch for both sides, obviously. And rest of the stitch should be neck. So 120 minus 20 times 4 is 80, so the neck part is 40. This is the example calculation. And then this is another decreasing example. So you have to decrease 20 stitch in total. 20 divided by 3 is 6.666. So let's decide to bind off 7 stitch on the first row. Then you can decrease 3 stitch on next right side, and then 2 stitch on next right side, then 1 each for rest, which is 8 times, total of 20 stitch, something like that. This is totally up to you. Now let's start knitting. Cast on multiple of 4. I made 200. I will knit in round, so 200 stitch is for front and back. By the time you start, you should figure it out all the numbers. So after the making plan for your vest, pretty much easy, just follow your number. That's about it. And I put 2 markers. One is begin marker, the other one is half marker, divided by front piece and back piece. And then before you start making rib, make sure all the stitches are not twisted. And then rib should be repeat off, knit 2 and purl 2 until your desired length. I knitted it about 2 inch. And from the second row, you just knit over knit stitch and purl over purl stitch. And again, the length is up to you. Just finish making rib. Now I would like to add some markers for front because this is for design and there's no design knitting on the back piece. So from the begin marker to mid marker, top part is the front and bottom part is back. And just add markers for shoulders. So count 16 from begin marker and mid marker. That's going to be decreasing 16 stitch for me. And after that, there's going to be shoulder and another 16 stitch. That's the shoulder marker you need to add. So the whatever your number, you have to count from the begin marker and mid marker. Then put the marker for shoulder. And then now you have to adjust the numbers because you only need 12 stitch for shoulder design. So you adjust evenly. For me, 2 stitch inward from both way. That's gonna be 12. And that's the marker you need for now. And I really want to make sure one thing. These numbers are all for me. I figured it out, the cast number and shoulder number and everything at the beginning. So I follow my pattern. And if you're knitting totally different sizes, and you have to follow your pattern. So please make sure about it. In other words, you're starting with the cast 300, and then follow my 16 and 18 and 12 and all that. It doesn't work. So after the rib, change the needle. Okay, I changed the needle from 3.25 to 3.5. I didn't really change much because I didn't want to make tight rib. So I'm using little, bigger needle. That's it. And then all knit around once. And after this, you just start knitting body part and pretty much all knit except the cable design. So just remember, all knit except cable design, which is the shoulder part. And you're looking at the little small thread in between stitch, and please don't even bother asking. Shoulder row number 1, right side. There's no right side and wrong side because I'm knitting in round, but you will know why I'm putting right side or wrong side later. Anyway, purl 4 to start. Very simple. And then C4B, which is cable 4 back. With the cable needle, pick up 2 stitch purlwise from left needle, and then put those 2 at the back, then knit 2 from left needle, then come back to cable needle and knit 2 from there. This is cable 4B. The cable design I use in this video, it's super easy. And purl 4. And again, you have 2 shoulders. So you use this row for the other side of the shoulder, obviously. And again, except the shoulders, they're all knit. So you knit until next shoulder marker. By the way, the thin thread, as you can see, that was supposed to be my security line, but I was actually a little struggle with that security line. So I decide not to use the security line. Anyway, here's another shoulder, row number 1, purl 4 to start. I'm going to show you one more time how to do cable 4 back, C4B. Here comes with the cable needle. Pick up 2 stitch from left needle and put this cable needle at the back. Then knit 2 from left needle. Come back to cable needle, then knit 2. And after that, purl 4. As you can see, with the security line, I'm a little bit struggle. This is my first time for me to use the security line, thread, or whatever. Supposed to be, good if you make a mistake later on, so you don't really have to, untie everything. But again, for me, it's really hard for me to knit with that, security thread. Anyway, please follow my written pattern. Very straightforward. And I will see you on row number 3 because there is a new technique kick in. Otherwise, you just use the knit stitch or purl stitch. It's gonna be so easy. Again, in my written pattern, even though you're knitting in round, it says right side and wrong side. That doesn't mean you have to knit flat, okay? You still have to knit in round because certain time I'm gonna say, okay, this has to be right side, this has to be wrong side. Later on you will know why I put right or wrong, even though in round. So please make sure you're knitting in round. Again, and I want to focus on how to knit the vest. So for the cable design, I just want to tell you the difficult part, and rest of them you can follow my written pattern. So see you on row number 3. Here comes shoulder row number 3, right side. Obviously, usually cable design do on the right side. Anyway, slide the marker and then purl 3 to start. And T3B and T3F. T3B means twist 3 back. And you really have to remember, if it's T3 back, pick 1 stitch up with the cable needle and then put the 1 stitch at the back. Then knit 2 from left needle first and then come back to cable needle, and there's 1 stitch and make purl 1. This is T3B, twist 3B. And now T3F. Pick up 2 stitch with the cable needle from left needle this time. 2. And then put out front. Okay? Then make 1 purl from left needle, then knit 2 from cable needle. This is the T3F, twist 3 front. After this, purl 3. This is row number 3, and I'll show you one more time how to do twist 3 back and twist 3 front. So you have to divide 3 stitches, 1 and 2, and 1 always purl. So T3B, this is T3B, okay? Pick up 1 and put out back, which means knit 2 first and then come back to 1 stitch, and I just told you 1 stitch always purl 1. So purl 1 from the cable needle. There you go. And now T3F, you have to divide 2 and 1, and now pick up 2, then out front, and the left of the stitch is 1, so make 1 purl from left needle and knit 2 from cable needle. There you go. And you have to repeat shoulder row number 1 to shoulder row number 12 until your desired length, which is top of the shoulder. So this design goes to end. So just keep knitting and knitting. And after this, I am going to talk about the pocket and the metal. And it's going to be small pocket. And you need 36 stitch. And I have 40 stitch in between shoulders, so it's perfect. I need 36 stitch for pocket. And again, please count evenly. I have 40 stitch in between shoulders, so 2 stitch both ends, and rest of them are 36 stitch. 36 stitches. Okay, so that's stitch I am going to use. So I knit 2 after the shoulder, then the pocket 36 stitch I will knit with different color of yarn. The contrast color will be the best because I'm not going to use this color of yarn later. I'm going to use this, the purplish color later. So anyway, please make sure you need to use contrast color, easy to see, because you have to cut this, yarn later. So the visible color will be the best. So anyway, knit 36 stitch, which is until 2 stitch before the marker for me. And whenever you finish, you cut the yarn, and then you will transfer all these, the pocket stitch back onto left needle. Just take your time. Here comes. Transfer all the pocket stitch back. If it's hard to do, you kind of flip and pick up the stitch like that. I'm a right hand person, so the other way was easier. Anyway, so now back onto the main color of the yarn and knit straight down, and just nothing happened. Just leave the blue yarn as is. And again, you have to count rows, how many rows you knit, until just about the height of the pocket. I knitted 39 rows after the pocket line. And I thought, okay, this is enough height for the pocket. So I am going to start knitting pocket. And this is kind of interesting way to make a pocket without seam. So you have to prepare the one set of the needle. Any size is okay. And then pick up the stitches at the same time, the top part and bottom part, like that. And knitting needle should be same needle size as body. Anyway, you will cut that blue yarn from, I guess, left, because I'm picking up from the left side. And when you cut the blue yarn like that, there's gonna be stitch at the bottom, the rib side, and stitch on the top part. And you will pick every single stitch. Please take your time. Don't drop any stitch off. Slowly, one by one. If it's really tough to pick up the stitch with the needle, you can actually use the tapestry needle because it's much thinner, so you can easily, pick up the stitch if you want. It's really up to you. Whether you use the needle or tapestry needle, whichever easier for you. The key point is you put the needle into the stitch, then take the blue line off like that. So you're never gonna, drop the stitch off. And there's reason why I pick up these stitches from left to right, because it's gonna be knitting method in next row. As you might know, after you pick those stitches up with two needle, there's gonna be big gap in between needle. You already see my fingers in between, the needles. Then you will close those gap with knit two together method. This is the reason why you're picking up the stitch from left to right. And some people think, why don't you knit just a pocket and sew them on to the body? Yes, you can do that, but I like seamless. So if you want a seamless pocket, this is the way. After you pick up the stitches, make sure you have 36 stitches top and bottom. If you do, you pick every single stitch. And now you need to use the needle, same needle as body. So, if you don't have too many set of the same size of the needle, you might have to, switch. Anyway, now you have to close that gap. So you grab the needle with left hand side like that and knit two together. But this time knit two, which means bottom and top together, not side by side. There you go. Then drop the stitch off, two stitch off, the bottom and top. Then knit two together. There you go. So it's going to be 36 stitches, but you can close the gap. So you just make knit two together across and close the gap at the same time. Just take your time. You really have to be careful not to drop off the stitches. And I meet you the other side. And again, please make sure stitch count before you start making, knit two together, because, if you have, the different stitch count, you can't really close the gap, right? So anyway, this is the end of the row. And here comes last knit two together. There we go. Now you close the big gap. And obviously, you're knitting in flat now. Okay, so before you start doing any design, let's put marker. You need to put marker in first 5 and last 5 stitch, because those 5 stitch total of 10 has to be garter stitch, which is knit both right and wrong, and rest of the 26 stitch in between markers, that's gotta be pocket design, cable design. So flip the work and then you are knitting wrong side. This is still preparation. And even if it's preparation, you still have to do garter stitch first 5 and last 5 stitch. So knit first 5 and last 5, and in between all purl. So I'm not going to talk about this garter stitch anymore. I focus on the cable design pattern from now on. So always first 5 and last 5 knit on the right side and wrong side as well. And in between, which is 26 stitches, the design pattern you have to follow. And this cable design is different than shoulder design and complete on row number 12. And I repeat it 3 times, which is 36 rows, right? And I just actually knit 2 rows to, prepare. The one is the knit 2 together line, and second one is, the one you're looking at right now, the wrong side, all purl. And one more extra line row is at the top of the pocket, which means 3 extra rows on top of the 36, which means 39 rows to complete this pocket. 39 rows, that's the rows I knitted for the body. Do you remember? I told you that you have to count from the pocket line, and I told you that I knit 39. That's the 39 row. So you will knit the pocket until where the body is, then ended up close with, body parts. Okay, so starting on the row number 1, and again, garter stitch, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. All knit on right and wrong. And this is pocket row number 1, right side, because this is flat knitting, right? Purl 2 and T3B. You already know how to do T3B, but I will tell you. Pick up 1 stitch from left needle with cable needle and put at the back, and knit 2 from left needle, then come back to cable needle and 1 purl there. This is twist 3 back. Then purl 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then C6B, cable 6 back. Pick up 3 stitch, put the cable at the back, then knit 3 from left needle, then come back to cable needle and knit 3 from the cable stitch. This is the cable 6 back. And 1 more stitch to go. There we go. Then purl 5. After purl 5, T3F, which is twist 3 front. And you already know how to do, but I'll show you again. If it's front, pick up 2 with the cable needle and then put the cable needle out front and 1 stitch left, which is purl from left needle, then come back to cable needle and knit 2. There you go. Just take your time, you don't really have to be in rush. Knit 2 from cable needle, then purl 2 to finish. And again, I'm not gonna focus on the cabling. So if it's straightforward, just follow my pattern, and I'll meet you on row number 3 and row number 6, because row number 2 and rest of them are pretty straightforward. Here is the row number 2. You're knitting in flat, so you turn the work, and this is gonna be wrong side, but still garter stitch, which is knit for the first 5 and last 5, and rest of them, as you can see, it's very straightforward. So please follow my instruction, and see you on row number 3. Here comes row number 3, right side. Let's start from beginning. Knit 5 for garter stitch. This is not include in the cable pattern. And slide the marker. Then cable design starts. Purl 1, T3B. Now you're expert for T3B. 1 at the back, and knit 2 from left needle, and make purl 1 from the cable needle, and after this purl 4, and now T5B, which is twist 5 back after purl 4, and you probably have some idea what it's really like for T5B, and probably you're right. Okay, you have to divide 5 into 2 and 3, and pick up 2 and put out the back, and then knit 3 from the left needle, then purl 2 from cable needle. This is the T5B. Again, now I'm making purl 2 from the cable needle. There you go. And then right after this, T5F. Okay, so you're picking 3 stitch from the left needle with cable needle and hold it out front. Then 2 purl from left needle, then come back to cable needle, and those 3 stitch, knit 3. Okay, you gotta remember this. It's quite easy. The method is same as T3B and T3F, just the different, the numbers, that's it. Okay, and after T5F, purl 4, then T3F coming, which is again easier. Pick up 2 and hold it front, then purl 1 from left needle, then knit 2 from cable needle, then last 1 stitch, purl 1, that's it. Then garter stitch last 5 should be on it. And after this, I was gonna jump into row number 6, but I decide I'm gonna show you row number 5 one more time. There's the T3B, T5B, stuff like that. So I am going to show you how to do row number 5. Then goes to row number 6. Anyway, row number 5, T3B to start. 1 stitch at the back with the cable needle, then knit 2 from left needle, then purl 1 from cable needle. This is T3B. Then purl 3. After purl 3, T5B. With the cable needle, you pick up 2 stitch from the left needle, then hold it at the back, then knit 3 from left needle, come back to cable needle, and this time purl 2 from cable needle. This is T5B, twist 5 back. Then purl 4. After purl 4, T5F, twist 5 front coming up. And T5F, pick up 3 with the cable needle and hold it at the front. Then purl 2 from left needle, come back to cable needle and knit 3 there. After T5F, purl 3. Then T3F. At very end, pick up 2 stitch from left needle and hold it out front, purl 1 from left needle, then knit 2 from cable needle. This is T3F. Then slide the marker, then garter stitch, which is knit 5. Then turn the work, and I'm going to tell you how to knit row number 6 because there's the method called MB, which is make bubble. This time I am going to make bubble on the wrong side and then push it out front. So let's do that. The very simple row except the bubble. So knit 5 to start, and as you can see, except the bubble, the pattern is quite simple. Okay, so purl 2 to start, then knit 1, then make bubble. Okay, now knit next stitch, knit front and back and front 3 times. Knit, regular knit, front, right, this one, and back loop, this is second time, and then one more knit front. There you go. Now 3 stitch in next, the 4th stitch, right? And turn the work, and those 3 stitch you knit 3. 1, 2, 3. And then you turn the work one more time and then knit 3. 1, 2, 3. And turn around again and you do same thing. Knit 3. So the fourth stitch, knit front and back and front, then turn around and knit 3 times. So now you're on the wrong side. And slide 1 stitch purlwise the yarn at the back and knit 2 together next to and then PSSO, past slip stitch over. Now there's only 1 stitch left. This is the fourth stitch and you create bubble. And knit 2, go back to the pattern and purl 3. I'll show you the bubble later. And then knit 8. After knit 8, purl 3 and knit 2. Then I'm gonna show you one more time how to do bubble, how to make a bubble. I'm still doing knit 8 and purl 3. Please watch carefully. And knit 2. Okay, so let's make bubble. Next stitch. Okay, zoom up. Knit front. This is just a regular knit and back and then one more. Front. Knit front, back and front. So 3 stitch instead of 1, right? And turn around, you're on the right side and knit 3. And turn back on the wrong side where you were and knit 3 again. You have to knit 3 times. One more time. You turn around. You're facing to right side now and knit 3 again. Those, 3 stitch. One, 2, 3. This is last time, right? Three times I did. And turn around and yarn back, slip 1 stitch, you're on the wrong side, and knit 2 together. That's why the yarn has to be at the back. Knit 2 together there, and then PSSO, pass, slip, stitch over. Okay, so you add 2 stitch to do the knit front and back and front, and then you decrease with knit 2 together and PSSO. So it's gonna be same stitch number. If you have 37 stitch or 35 stitch after you made the bubble, you did something wrong. Has to be 36 after the bubble. There you go. And turn around. You're facing to right side, and I'll show you the bubble. There you go. It's the same color, so it's hard to see, but there is bubble right there. It's a little bit loose right now, but in next row, the bubble will stay. Anyway, pocket row number 1 to row number 12, just repeat until the same line as the body line. And for me, I am going to repeat 3 times. And then lastly, I'm gonna join with the body. So now I knit 39 for body. The next row should be 40 row. And pocket, I knit 39 rows from the bottom. So next row should be 40, right? So now you have to join them together. All right? Which means you cut the pocket yarn and just leave it there and keep the needle in the pocket stitch. Then start knitting for body until the pocket stitch start. Okay, so just knit the first shoulder design as is. I don't even remember which row I was on, but so you really have to write everything down, then just keep knitting whatever the row. Okay, here comes. After the shoulder, I have a 40 stitch for the body and 36 for the pocket. So you really have to figure it out when, to start. Join them together. For me, 2 and 2 at the back, and rest of them are, pocket stitches. So after the shoulder, knit 2 and then pocket start. Now knit 2 together to attach the pocket onto body. There you go. Same as before, so it's quite easy. There you go. Knit 2 together, the pocket front and body at the back. So pick up 2 stitch and then knit 2 together and drop the 2 stitch off until the end of the pocket. And pocket marker, you don't need it anymore, so you can remove it. Pocket height is up to you. If you're knitting smaller size, maybe you want to make shorter pocket, right? And it complete on the 12th row. That doesn't mean you have to repeat certain number of the time. You can actually stop right on the row number 6 or 7. It's really up to you. But for me, I thought the finish on row number 12 should be nice appearance later on, and height was good enough, so it was actually it turned perfectly. Anyway, after you attach the pocket onto the body, you just have to keep knitting until your arm opening starts, which is decreasing part. And I want you to think one thing. Around the arm opening, you will add rib. I don't know how much you want to add, but I was thinking maybe inch to 1.5 inch rib I am going to knit later on. So I stop the body maybe 2 inch below the arm opening, because you don't really want a tight arm opening, right? So you really have to, make a plan. How long do you want, and how wide do you want, and how wide you already, figured it out, right? But the length, it's really up to you. You want to cover your butt, or you want to, stop waistline. It's really up to you. So, key for success, you should measure everything and make a plan ahead. So, I knitted it about 11 inch from the bottom. And this is for myself, so I put it on, and I like that length. So I decide I'm gonna stop, then make arm opening, which is decreasing both sides. And I put the green marker, which is first bind off stitch marker. I am going to end it up, decreasing 16 stitch, but first row 6 stitch for front and back. So total of 12 around the mid stitch, same as begin marker. And I add pink marker, and you don't really have to worry about right now. I just want to, make sure how many stitch I'm going to, decrease. That's the only reason I add. By the way, these number, like, the bind off 6 stitch and, 16 stitch total, blah, blah, blah. This is according to my plan, my pattern, right? At the very beginning, we, did the math together, and you already figured it out, your number, right? So that's what you have to do. So, the bind off 6, which is my size. So please don't forget about it, okay? Let's bind off 6 stitch. And this must be right side of the row for, the shoulder design. So 1 stitch bind off just now, and 2. I just want to talk about one thing here. I add marker after the 6th stitch. But whenever you hit the marker, you only did 5 bind off. The last stitch you need to bind off is after. Remove the marker and knit 1. There you go. And this is 6 stitch. Now I did 6 stitch bind off. And here comes. For the shoulder design, has to be right side of the row, which is odd number of the row. So if this is not the odd number of the row, you have to actually knit 1 more row before you start bind off. Okay? Anyway, the other side of the bind off. So bind off 6 for front and 6 for the back piece. So you need to bind off total of 12 here. And now you don't need mid stitch anymore, because this is the last row you knit in round. Now you knit in flat, first of all, you knit front piece. Then whenever you finish front piece, you knit back piece. And I add green marker for, mid stitch, but doesn't mean anything really. I thought I might need, you know, but I didn't. So forget about that, green stitch I added there. There you go. Remove the marker and then one more bind off. And then knit back piece until end, because the other side you still have to bind off 6 stitch, right, for the back piece. There you go. And this time you are going to cut the yarn after no more stitch to bind off. I'm sorry this is such a long video, but you need every single part. But later on, I'm gonna add timing in my description box. So if you don't need, or if you wanna watch a couple more times, you can do that. Okay, so one last stitch, okay? And no more stitch, right? So you just cut it and then weave the ends off. That's about it for very last stitch. And again, I am going to knit front piece first. So I am going to transfer back piece stitch onto other needle, or you can actually use the scrap yarn, whichever you want, easier for you. For me, I use needle because it's easy to transfer either way, right? Now you will going to start knitting, but has to be wrong side, because do you remember last row, the bind off row was right side, so you must start wrong side. And remember, for the back piece you have to start on wrong side. And there's the flat pattern in my description box, so please use flat pattern, because it's different wording, obviously, because there's right side and wrong side now. Okay? And please count how many rows you knitted for the back piece, because you don't want to have back piece shorter or longer than front piece, right? It has to be equal. And decreasing starts really soon. One thing I want you to remember, decreasing always on right side, okay? Not on the wrong side, because for me it's easier and it's nice and neat. And obviously decreasing starts on the right side of the body. Here comes. After bind off 6, I decide I am going to decrease 3 stitch on the next row. So here comes. Knit 1 to start, and then SSK 3 times. So slip, slip, and knit. This is decrease 1, right? So 2 more SSK. Total of 3 stitch decrease. And 1 more. And then you just continue knitting until the other side. And you have to decrease same amount of the stitch on the other side, which is left side, right? which means you have to stop 7 stitch before the end. Here comes left side, but not the left side of the sweater, you know what I mean. Anyway, 7 stitch before this side, you must use knit two together method 3 times and then knit 1 at the end. Here comes knit 2 together 3 times, which decrease 3 stitch, and then one more, knit 1 at the end. And wrong side, you're not going to decrease any stitch, just knit straight forward. The decreasing is always on the right side. Here comes, I decide I'm gonna decrease 1 stitch on right side for 7 times. Knit 1 and SSK 1 time, and knit until the other side, and you know what to do. 3 stitch before the last stitch and knit 2 together and knit 1. Here comes last 3 stitch, knit 2 together and knit 1. And decreasing should be done within 10 to 20 rows, something like that. So you will adjust, decreasing number within 10 to 20 rows. Okay? For me, 6 bind off, 3 decreasing, then 1 each at a time. And that creates that, a curve. Now, let's get ready for placket. The placket located in the middle of front piece. So count stitches from both ends and find knit 8 stitch and add markers like that. In between green markers, there's 8 stitch. That's gonna be your placket. And you need stitch holder and another ball of yarn, because the after you create the placket, you will knit right side with right side of the ball, left side with left side of the ball. So let's start and talk about that, the placket. Keep knitting just as is until you hit placket marker. And you could bind off the placket 8 stitch, but I decide not to. I am going to transfer 8 stitch onto the stitch holder. Either way, you watch this video until end and then you decide. You want to keep the 8 stitch or you want to bind off. Either way, I decide I am going to keep 8 stitch onto the stitch holder. Really up to you, and I will tell you why I said that. There you go, 8 stitch. And remove the placket marker. And now you're going to knit the other side with same needle but different ball of yarn. So you will have to, prepare another set of the ball of yarn, just a tiny bit, because you just have to finish the one side of the shoulder, pretty much it. So depend on how long you want. But okay, anyway, attach the another ball of yarn and then knit the same row as the other side. So now one needle, two ball of yarn. So it gets tangled sometimes, but just take your time and don't get too tangled. So after this, just keep knitting until 4 rows before your desired length for your shoulder. 4 rows before your desired length. So the placket will be just the gap, and then two kind of shoulder line getting longer and longer. And I'll show you what it's really like. Next picture. There you go. Just like that. And just knitting. Keep knitting until your desired length. You can actually start making placket way earlier, but I decide not to because I want to keep this very simple. Anyway, I need about 20 inch from the bottom to top. And I decide, okay, this is enough. The placket is long enough, about the 7 inch. So this is the time I should, finish. However, I told you 4 rows before the end, right? Because, I want to create kind of, a neck shape, because placket itself is, too narrow for your neck. And your shoulder is 16 stitch total each side, right? So those 16 stitch shoulder, that's the stitch you want to knit 4 more rows. Then rest of the stitch goes to neck. So transfer all the neck stitch onto the scrap yarn. And again, knit only shoulder stitch for 4 more rows. So remember, those two orange marker is just for the cable design, and there's only 12 stitch. So 2 stitch out of the orange marker, both side, creates the 16 stitch. That's gonna be my shoulder stitches, right? So those 16 stitch, I am going to knit 4 more rows for both shoulder. So anyway, the keep knitting whatever your row you're on, and then I'll tell you this is the first row of 4 rows, right? And then there you go, 16 rows. That's gotta be shoulder. And the rest of the stitch transfer, because you're not going to knit those stitches. So just keep with the scrap yarn. If you want to have kind of deeper, wider neck, you can actually knit more. It doesn't have to be 4 rows, but 4 rows is enough, I believe. But if you have a thick shoulder neck area, you can, knit 6 more. It's really up to you, but 4 rows is enough. So again, turn the work, and then now knitting wrong side because only 16 stitch. So I'm gonna, finish this side first because only 4 rows, right? And then, goes to the other side of the shoulder. So no more neck stitch, right? Only 16 stitch. And after this wrong side, 2 more rows you knit. That's about it. And then after you knit 4 more rows, transfer all the shoulder stitch onto scrap yarn or stitch holder, whatever. There you go, just like that. And 2 more rows. And I knit 4 rows. Then transfer all the shoulder stitches onto stitch holder. And you do exactly same thing for the other side of the shoulder. Now you create kind of, the neck, opening. By the way, you do exactly same thing on the back piece. And I told you to count how many rows you knit, right? You count until this, extra 4 rows. I actually did 61 rows. Then knit 4 rows. Anyway, the other side of the shoulder I'm doing, the neck part comes first, this side, obviously. So I'm transferring all the neck stitch onto scrap yarn and leave the shoulder 16 stitch, which I have to, knit 4 more rows, right? And here comes, and I have to, cut the yarn and then attach the new ball of yarn because, you're kind of start knitting in the middle of, the top line, right? Anyway, again, you do exactly same thing as before. Now let's look. Okay, here goes. That's the placket, right? And around here, the neck area, then 4 rows, higher for the shoulder part. And looks like shoulder part is too narrow. But don't worry about it. You will add rib around the arm opening, right? So it will be beautiful. Don't worry about it. Anyway, you will knit back piece exactly same as front piece except the placket part, right? So the decreasing around the arm same, and the neck area pretty much same except the placket. So let's start. But remember, back piece starts on wrong side, right? Because you bind off 6 stitch blah 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 on right side. So you start on wrong side for back piece. And then you're not going to decrease any stitch on wrong side. So just knit, purl, all purl across. And then next row, which is right side, decreasing starts. And again, for the front piece, I knit 61 rows until, you know, 4 rows before you finish. So you just have to count because you don't want to knit shorter or any longer than front piece, right? So this is row number 1. Okay, so until row 61 you will knit. And if you don't remember how to decrease both, side, go back and watch the video. But, bind off 6 stitch and decrease 3 stitch and then 1 each until, you hit the 16 stitch you decreased. And then now I knitted it 61 row. There you go. And then now you have to knit 4 rows more for shoulders. So I put the green marker. That's gonna be shoulder marker, 16 stitch from both ends. And you know what I'm going to do, right? Just knit this, shoulder and transfer all the neck stitch onto scrap yarn and then knit the other side of the shoulder, 4 rows. That's about it. So again, the back piece is all knit on the right side and all purl on the wrong side. So I'm just knitting 16 stitch, right? This is the first row of full extra row. And I am going to transfer all the next stitch onto scrap yarn and then knit the shoulder extra. Once you know how to adjust the sizes and how to decrease around the arm opening, you can knit any size you want and any type of the vest, like a V-neck or the round neck. You can do pretty much anything. The most difficult part and fun part is making a plan, adjusting your size, the math at the very beginning. That's about it. The gauge doesn't change. So, if you're using the same needle and yarn all the time, you can adjust sizes easily. So you can, knit vest for whole family. After this, I am going to join the front piece and back piece, with the shoulder line. It's gonna be fun. Here comes. There you go. Now, 4 rows raised, back piece. Your shoulder line is very visible right now because, for extra, right? And then neckline is little below. And this is the front piece. And I am going to, attach those 2 shoulders. And you can actually flip the sweater inside out and then you can, do knit two together to attach, but I am not going to do that. I am going to use technique called Kitchener stitch. I'll tell you in a minute. And I am actually trying to tell you what it's going to be like right now, after the attachment of the shoulder. I am going to knit, the arm opening rib. Anyway, the Kitchener stitch the wrong side to together, and you're facing to right side, and you need tapestry needle and entail. That's about it. And Kitchener stitch, you attach two pieces together, but there's no seam really. It's kind of smooth surface. So I really like, this technique to use. Anyway, you have to remember full thing. Left top corner, there's the Kitchener stitch pattern. And you really have to watch what I'm doing. But knit front stitch and purl front stitch, which means knit purl and purl back stitch and knit back stitch. Knit, purl, purl, knit. Knit, purl, purl, knit. That's how you move. Knit front, then off. Okay, I'll show you. Knit front stitch, right? That's the way you knit. So knit and pull, right? Then off means stitch off from the needle. And snuggle, right? And then next, purl front stitch. So purl front stitch. And then stay. So you will not drop that stitch off. Then move on. Purl back stitch. Okay, purl back stitch and pull. Then drop that stitch off. There you go. And pull. Then knit back stitch. Stay. Come back to front stitch, then knit front stitch, and then off. You just have to repeat from 1 to 4 until all the stitches are gone. There you go. Off. And purl back stitch, then off. After you drop the stitch off, pull the yarn and knit back stitch and stay. You just keep doing this, the pattern 1 to 4 until one last stitch. It doesn't have to be multiple of 4 stitch or anything. Whenever one stitch left, that's the time you stop. There you go. Now I just did the purl back, which is number 3, so off, and then knit back stitch, then stay. Oh, I just actually made a mistake. It has to be stay. There you go. Back. There you go. And then knit front stitch. This stitch was actually, number 2 purl front stitch stay before. So whenever you come back, you knit one more, same stitch and then off. But don't even think about that, okay? Just follow that, pattern. And I use this technique for my socks. the tip of my, the socks, I would like to have line very smooth. So I use this technique. Again, if you don't like this technique, the easiest way is you turn the work inside out and put the two shoulder right side together. And then you have to, the purl two together because, you're knitting wrong side. So purl two together, or this Kitchener, stitch technique, either one. But do not use knit two together because you're on the wrong side, and then don't do knit two together, wrong side two together because the little bump on the shoulder showing off, you don't want it, right? You want to smooth on the right side surface. Anyway, there you go. One stitch off, and I'm sorry I didn't actually show you the last part, but one stitch off and just the weave the ends off as usual. I wasn't, aware that I was off camera and, weave the ends off. There you go. That's about it. And this is the surface that I just did the Kitchener stitch. The back piece, there's no big bump, no line, nice and smooth, even though wrong side. You can do the purl two together, you know, but this is much nicer and smoother. Now I want to talk about the sleeves. I already done the other side. And again, the first sleeve I've done, I gotta write it down. How many, the stitch I knit up and how many rows I, made a rib. So you gotta do that too. And I changed the needle, the smaller side, same as the hem rib. Okay. First of all, you have to knit up around and starting under the armpit because it won't show. Please do not start on the top of the shoulder or the front. Okay, the under the armpit, that's the best way. So put the needle in, and then with the new ball of yarn, hook and pull out just like knitting. You already did the knit up before, so. And then here's the thing, you go around, but you are going to knit up 3 stitch in a row, and then fourth stitch you have to skip 1 stitch and knit up the fourth stitch. Okay, so you knit second one and now third one in third stitch, and then skip next row, and then second stitch. You put the needle in and knit up. Because if you knit every single row, the rib is gonna be jammed up, too many and flares up. So knit up 3 and 1 skip stitch and then knit up 4th, and you have to repeat those 4 sets. And I need stitch count total of multiple of 4. So 1 2 3 in next stitch, and 4th knit up stitch, skip 1 and then knit up next, and then go around. And again, you should knit up same stitch count as the other side. So if you're knitting first one, write it down how many how many stitch you have, and then you knit up, try to be knitting up same number, you know trying to. Now I want to talk about one trick with crochet hook. If you have a crochet hook, it's actually much easier to knit up. That's because this is kind of round, right? So, well, you just have to pull the needle and then knit up. But if you have a crochet hook, put the crochet hook into the stitch and then pull. There you go. Super easy this way. And hook onto the needle. And next stitch, pull, and just keep doing. And then 4th stitch, same rule. 1 stitch skip and then next. Exactly. So this is gonna be nice and perfect, arm opening rib. You can knit up, every stitch, but it's gonna be jammed up. This way, much better looking. And now you start making rib, which is repeat of knit 2 and purl 2, multiple of 4. So you should start with knit 2 and end with purl 2. If you don't have to be so perfect, it doesn't really matter, any number you want, because sometimes adjusting is pain in the neck, so it's really up to you. And starting around the under the armpit, so nobody can really see. But if you want to be so perfect because it's a gift or whatever, should be multiple of 4. And then from second row, you just have to knit over knit stitch and purl over purl stitch. And once you hit the desired length, I think I knitted about the inch or a little over inch. It's really up to you. Cast off, but cast off, I use bigger size of the needle because I don't like the tension too much. So I'm using 3.25 millimeter needle right now, and I am going to use 3.5, which is same as the body. See, can you see? So the cast off will be a little bit loose. I seriously don't like the tension, It's really up to you. If you already knit quite loose, vest, sure, you can use same needle as the rib. Oh my goodness. Almost done. And I will talk about neck and placket. Please hang in there, everybody. Now, beautiful arm opening rib. Now, neck. So, you have all the neck stitches on the scrap yarn and transfer all the stitch back onto the needle, but please count all the stitch, and you will have to knit some stitch around the shoulder line, and this time has to be multiple of 4 plus 2. So you kind of have to make a plan how many stitch you want to knit up for both side to create total of multiple of 4 plus 2. You know what I'm saying? So I count the front piece. I have 14 stitch each front piece, and back of my neck I have 36 stitches, right? So the front piece 28, back piece 36, total of 64. And I have to knit up on the side of the shoulder and make it multiple of 4 plus 2. So I decide I am going to knit up 7 stitches each, total of 14. So 28, 36, 14 makes 78, which is multiple of 4 plus 2. And I start knitting with 3.25 millimeter smaller needle than body. Knit 14 stitch front, and after this there's no more stitch, so you have to knit up, and my plan is 7 stitch each side, right? So knit up 7 stitch, and this is up to you. If you have more longer side and you think you should knit up more, you can actually knit up more just to make sure multiple of 4 plus 2. And again, if it doesn't have to be so perfect, it doesn't really matter. Multiple of 4 is fine, or even other number. Okay, it's just a color, so who cares? If you think that way, totally fine. Okay, but for me, I want to be nearly perfect, close to perfect. So I picked the 78, which is I should knit up 7 stitch. That's what I'm doing right now. And after knit up 7 stitch, you just keep knitting for the back of your neck, which you have a stitch, so it's easy. The color is super easy. Just knit up and little bit of math. That's about it. And then this is not round knitting. So once you knit up, okay, you just turn the work, and then you're going to knit wrong side first. And then it's really up to you. You can start with the repeat of knit 2 and purl 2, or purl 2, knit 2. It doesn't really matter. Me, I am going to repeat purl 2 and knit 2 because this is wrong side, and then ended up with the purl 2. And after you finish this row, turn the work and knit over knit stitch and purl over purl stitch until your desired length. And this has to be color. So I think I did over 3 inch. Okay, just go back and forth, back and forth. And there we go. Over 3 inch. I knit the color. Now let's talk about the placket. I am going to knit up. Has to be from bottom to top on the right side facing. So you know which one to start. Knit up right side from bottom to top. So that's how you figured it out which one to start with. And then again, the placket stitch count should be multiple of 4 plus 2. And I ended up knit up 54 stitches, which is multiple of 4 plus 2. And then this time you should have stitch count multiple of 4 plus 2 because I want you to start with knit 2 and knit 2 at the end on the right side. So, well, technically, I want you to finish with knit 2 at the bottom of the placket. So, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to remember at the bottom of the placket on the right side has to be knit 2. So, anyway, I knit up 54. This is multiple of 4 plus 2. And I just finished. So turn around and now you're on wrong side. There we go. And again, I want to finish knit 2 on the right side, which means you have to finish with purl 2 on the wrong side, right? So on the wrong side, I'm going to repeat purl 2 and knit 2 until last 2 stitch and then purl 2 to finish, but my written pattern says plus 1 from bottom. What do you mean plus 1 purl from the bottom? I will tell you. So repeat off purl 2 and knit 2 until the bottom of this placket. And earlier I told you you could bind off that placket. So I am going to explain why I said that. Okay, here comes. This is almost end of the placket. Knit, knit, and 2 more stitch, purl 2. This is end. However, there's the 8 stitch for the placket. Do you remember? 8 stitch, placket stitch. You make 1 more purl from that placket. 1 stitch out of 8, the first one. So now you have purl 3 on the right needle. The purl 2 is the regular placket stitch, and then the last one is from that 8 stitch. Now you have only 7 placket stitch on the cable needle, and turn around. So right side there's 3 knit, right, stitch instead of 2, because you increase. Now you decrease with knit 2 together. You increase, making the extra purl 1. Now you decrease with that extra stitch. Knit 1 there, so now you have knit 2 there, and then next 2 should be purl 2. So knit over knit stitch and purl over purl stitch until the end. Okay, I'm not explaining you the reason why I said you could bind off, because the ratio, you're knitting wrong direction, right? So the stitch and rows are different ratio. So sometimes you have to, do something. Anyway, row number 4, wrong side. Knit over knit stitch and purl over purl stitch. And then it says purl 1 or purl 2 together from the bottom. So I just finished the placket, right? And can you see the length of the rib and the rest of the 7 stitch? If the rib is quite higher than placket stitch, you have to adjust. Okay, and I decide I am going to make 1 purl because it's not that bad. So turn around, and there's 3 knit stitch again. So the first 2 knit 2 together, and then knit over knit stitch and purl over purl stitch. And next row, same as row number 4. Now the rib is quite longer, and then maybe too many, the placket stitch left. So I decide I am going to use 2 stitch from the bottom, which I have to do purl 2 together instead of purl 1. There you go. And then turn around and do the same thing, because purl 2 together, which creates only 1 purl, right? So there you go. From the right side, there's only 3 stitch there. I didn't make, the purl 2 together. So do the exactly same thing. So you have to repeat row number 3 and row number 4 until the placket bottom stitch are all gone. And now you understand, because of the ratio, maybe sometimes if you bind off those 8 stitch, you can actually pick, or knit any stitch you want up. You know what I'm saying? You don't really have to worry about, should I do the purl 1 here or purl 2 together. You just have to knit up, the one last stitch from the placket area, right? You know what I'm saying? But for me, it was easier because there is stitch there. So I can kind of, think, okay, this is maybe 1 or this is 2. And I ended up knit 10 rows. So 8 stitch at the bottom, and I use only wrong side. And if you pick 1 stitch out of time, has to be 16 row altogether to finish 8 placket stitch. But I only did 10 rows, which means I made purl 2 together a few times, right? And then I'm going to cast off from bottom to top. And you cut the ends off, then weave the ends off on the corner of the other side of the corner of placket. So it will stay there, right? If I didn't explain this well enough, I am so sorry. You can leave your comment or question in the comment area, and I will try to help you to explain it a little bit more detail. And after this, you have to knit the other side of the placket, but no more placket stitch at the bottom, right? So you just have to knit same stitch number and same rows, and no attachment at the bottom. Just knit the rib from top to bottom. That's it. And then you will end it up so there. That's about it. And I am actually going to show you how. And I'm not going to show you every little, the stitch I made. I already knit the other side of the placket. Can you see? No attachment yet. Just, make rib. So super easy. And you can sew on top or bottom. It's up to you. I am going to sew this placket inside. And, you can actually make the button hole and put some button as well if you like, but I didn't this time. Anyway, this is it. Now you have seamless vest. It's all yours. Thanks for watching. Enjoy knitting. Bye for now.